Hello, welcome to Zigmatech Learning Hub. I'll be your instructor for biology. For this class, we are going to be taking our exercises from the Examguide app. Now, if you don't already have this installed in your device, I would like you to download the app in order to follow along in this class. Now, Examguide is a leading educational app that helps students prepare adequately for various exams. Exams such as the UTME, the post-UTME, WAEC, GCE, IJMB, KCPE, JUPEB, Calbepedia. In the junior sections, we also have the BECE, we have the SSCE, and so much more. Now, you can download the app from www.examguide.com or you visit the Google Play Store to download. Now, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to update yourselves on new videos that will be coming up. Now, if you're ready for this class, let's get started. Today, we're going to be looking at Transport System 3. We have looked at Transport System 1. We've also discussed Transport System 2. Please do well to get those videos. And today, we're going to be looking at Transport System 3. Now, in this particular topic, there are several subtopics we're going to be looking at. First of all, we're going to be talking about definition and types of circulatory system. Definition and types of circulatory system. We're also going to be discussing definition and types of blood vessels. Definition and types of blood vessels. We're also going to be looking at blood flow through the vessels, how blood flows through the vessels, and also to the heart and to the lungs and all that. We're going to be looking at how the blood flows. And then lastly, we're going to be discussing main blood vessels of the body. The main blood vessels of the body, mostly looking at the arteries, all right? And then our specific objective is by the end of this class, you should be able to define and mention the types of circulatory system. Number 2, you should be able to describe what we call open and closed circulatory system. Number 3, you should be able to describe single and double circulatory system. And number 4, you should be able to describe pulmonary and systemic circulation. Pulmonary and systemic circulation. You should also be able to define and mention the types of blood vessels, be able to describe the arteries, the veins, and then the capillaries. You should also be able to explain the blood flow through these blood vessels and mention the main blood vessels that are found in the body, mostly the arteries, okay? So if you're set, let's begin with the first one that has to do with the definition of circulatory system. Circulatory system. Now, as the name implies, circulatory, it has to do with what? A continuous circular movement. So we can define circulatory system as the continuous circular or continuous flow, let's put it this way, the continuous flow of movement of blood around the body. Continuous flow or movement of blood around the body. Now, the circulatory system is actually made up of the blood vessels as well as the heart. These are the two main compartments that makes up the circulatory system, blood vessels and the heart. And in this class, we're going to be discussing about the blood vessels, but in our subsequent classes, we're going to describe the heart. So today, let's take a look at types of circulatory system. We've just looked at what makes up the circulatory system. We said it's the blood vessels and the heart, but we have different types of circulatory system. Now, we have three main types of circulatory system. Number 1 is called opened and closed circulatory system. Number 2 is called single and double circulatory system. And number 3 is called pulmonary and systemic circulation, or you can call it circulatory system. These are the three main types of circulatory system. Now, we will be starting with the first one, which is called opened and closed circulatory system. Now, let's take a look at what is open circulatory system. What is open circulatory system? Now, open circulatory system is a system in which the blood is confined within the cavities of the heart. Please take note, blood vessels and an empty space which is called the homocoels. Okay, homocoels. So the interaction or the flow or the movement of the blood is between the heart, the blood vessels, and the what? An empty space. I said it's an empty space which is called the homocoels. Now, the empty space, which is the homocoels, is where blood have a direct contact with the cells of the body. The blood has a direct contact with the cells of the body. Okay? Now, most times, open circulatory system is found in arthropods, in most arthropods, and also in some mollusks. You see open circulatory system. But we have also closed circulatory system. But before we go to closed circulatory system, you can see the structure on the screen. We have an open circulatory system there. That is an open circulatory system. Now, closed circulatory system. Closed circulatory system. Now, it is a system in which blood is confined, please note this, within the cavity of the blood vessels and the heart without having a direct contact with the blood cells of the body. There is no direct contact with the blood cells. In an open circulatory system, there is a contact with the blood, with the cells of the body. And we said that open space is what we call the homocoels. But in this case, there is no contact. The movement of the blood is between the heart and the blood vessels. The heart and the blood vessels. Now, you find closed circulatory system mostly common in most vertebrates. Common in vertebrates and in some invertebrates, like in the annelids. The annelids is a segmented worm. Example is the earthworm. The earthworm undergoes closed circulatory system. But all vertebrates, which includes pisces, amphibians, reptiles, aves, as well as mammals, they all undergo closed circulatory system. Okay, closed circulatory system. Now, we move to the next type of circulatory system, which we talked about. We said it is double circulatory system. Double circulatory system. Now, single and double circulatory system, rather. Now, single circulatory system. Now, this is a system in which the blood only passes through the heart once every time it makes a complete movement around the body. So for the blood to make a complete movement around the body, it passes through the heart just once. Passes through the heart once. Now, the reason why it passes through the heart once is mostly because the heart is a two-chambered heart. A two-chambered heart is not divided into more than two chambers. We will have only auricles and ventricles. And this type of two-chambered hearts can be found in mostly pisces, which is in fish. So in fish, we see single circulatory system. Single circulatory system. Now, next is the double circulatory system. In double circulatory system, you've noticed that the blood passes through the heart twice, hence the name double. In single circulatory system, it passes through the heart once. But in terms of double circulatory system, it passes through the heart twice every time it makes a complete movement around the body. So it passes through the heart once. Now, this type of circulatory system is usually found in four-chambered heart organisms, mostly vertebrates that are four-chambered. And these four-chambered organisms or vertebrates include mammals and aves. So in mammals and aves or birds, you see double circulatory system. But in terms of pisces, which has a two-chambered heart, you see single circulatory system. So please note, double circulatory system, blood passes through the heart twice, and then in single circulatory system, blood passes through the heart once. Now, also please take note of this because it's going to come. Also, please take note of this. Organisms that undergo double circulatory system also undergo pulmonary and systemic circulation. So double circulatory system brings about or involves pulmonary and systemic circulation. Pulmonary and systemic circulation. Now that brings us to the third type of circulatory system, which is referred to as what? Pulmonary and systemic circulation. So like I said before, all organisms, all vertebrates that have or undergo double circulatory system also undergo pulmonary circulation as well as systemic circulation. Now, what is pulmonary circulation? What is pulmonary circulation? Now, pulmonary circulation is a type of circulation that involves the movement of blood from the heart to the lungs for oxygenation. Movement of blood from the heart to the lungs, from the heart to the lungs. And the reason why it is going to the lungs, it is for oxygenation. For oxygenation. So that is what we call pulmonary circulation. You can see on the screen, blood moving away from the heart and it is getting to the lungs for oxygenation, and it returns back from the heart back toward from the lungs rather back to the heart. So the movement, that circulation, that circular movement rather, from the heart to the lungs, from the lungs back to the heart, that movement is what we call pulmonary circulation. Of course, the word pulmonary speaks of the lungs. So it has to do with the relationship between the lungs and the heart in terms of movement of the blood. Now, the next one is systemic circulation. Systemic circulation. Now, systemic circulation is a type of circulation that involves the movement of the blood from the heart this time to other parts of the body. To other parts of the body. Remember, that's why we said that both pulmonary and systemic circulation is involved in double circulation. So the blood, you can see that blood passes through the heart twice in double circulation. It passes, first of all, it passes from the heart to the lungs, okay, and then returns. That's first circulation, blood passing through the heart once, and then from the heart, it passes from the heart again, that's the second time, to the parts of the body, okay? So that is what we call systemic circulation. Blood moving from the heart to other parts of the body and from the other parts of the body back to the heart. So blood passes from the heart to the lungs, pulmonary circulation, from the heart to the other parts of the body, that is systemic circulation, okay? Now let's talk about, we're talking about blood vessels, blood vessels, blood vessels. What are blood vessels? What are blood vessels? And remember, we said that one of the components of a circulatory system, one of the effective components of a or what makes up the circulatory system, one of them is the blood vessels and the other is the heart. And I said the heart will be discussed in other classes we're going to have. But please take note of blood vessels. Blood vessels. By definition, what are blood vessels? Now, blood vessels are tubes within the body through which the blood flows away and into the heart. Please take note of this. I said they are tubes, or you can call them channels, through which the blood flows away or into the heart. Away or into the heart. So we have different types of blood vessels. Different types. Number one, we have what we call the artery. The artery. Number two, we have the vein. And number three, we have what we call the capillary. So artery, vein, and capillary. Now, what are arteries? Now, arteries, they are actually blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart. They take blood away from the heart. Now, in terms of structure, The arteries have thick muscular walls with small openings compared to that of the vein, with small opening. Now, those openings, we call them lumen. Small canal openings is called lumen. Now, the arteries also, in terms of structure, their walls, their muscular walls are elastic to withstand high pressure. So when the pressure of blood starts passing through that tube, they can expand. They are very elastic. Okay. Now, another thing again you should note about the arteries is that the arteries do not have valves. Now, what is the functions of valve? Valves helps to prevent backflow of blood. They help to prevent the backflow of blood. So there is an absence, or there is absence of valves in the arteries. Please take note of these three important facts about the structure of the arteries. Now, what are the functions of the arteries? Now, the arteries, I'm going to give you just two functions of the arteries. Number one is that they carry blood, like I said, away from the heart. They take blood away from the heart. Now, another major function of the artery is that they transport what we call oxygenated blood. Now, oxygenated blood is a type of blood that has oxygen in it, or that carries oxygen in it. So they transport oxygenated blood. The only artery that does not transport oxygenated blood is the pulmonary artery. The pulmonary artery. It does not transport oxygenated blood. So note these two important functions of the arteries. One is that they carry blood away from the heart. Number two is that they transport oxygenated blood, except the pulmonary artery. Except the pulmonary artery. The second type of blood vessel is the veins. The veins. Now, in terms of structure, okay, but before we go into that, the veins, they bring blood, or they carry blood into the heart. Arteries take blood away from the heart. Veins bring blood into the heart. Now, in terms of structure, the walls of the veins, they are less elastic. They are not thick. Remember, we said in arteries, their walls are thick. They have thick muscular walls. But in terms of veins, they have thin walls. And these walls are not elastic. But in terms of the opening, okay, the canal or lumen, the lumen in veins are large compared to that of an artery. Now, with this, you can get differences between veins and arteries. Now, another difference, another structure, features of the structure of the vein is that the veins, they have valves. Remember, arteries do not have valves. And I said that the function of the valve is to prevent the backflow of blood. So there is no backflow of blood in the vein. Now, functions of the vein. The vein also carries out two important functions. Number one, it has already been said. We said that they carry blood into the heart. They take blood into the heart. Another function of the vein is that they transport deoxygenated blood. Now, deoxygenated blood simply means a blood that does not carry oxygen, or that does not have oxygen in it. So they transport deoxygenated blood. The only vein that carry oxygenated blood is called the pulmonary vein. So please take note, the only artery that carry deoxygenated blood is pulmonary artery. The only vein that carries oxygenated blood is the pulmonary vein. Now, the next one, which is the third, is called the capillaries. Now, you can see on the screen, in terms of structure, the capillaries is smaller compared to the artery and to the vein. In terms of the lumen, it is even much more smaller compared to that of the artery and also that of the vein. The walls are very thin, not compared to the artery or the vein at all. But what is the major functions of the capillaries? The capillary is just simply a link. It serves as a linking blood vessel that links the arteries and what? The vein. It links the arteries to the vein. Now, they have, like I said, thin walls, and the thin wall, the reason for the thin walls is for easy diffusion of what? Essential materials that are passing through it. Easy diffusion into the cells. Okay, oxygen can easily diffuse into the cells. Nutrients, digested food can easily diffuse. Waste products can diffuse from the cells into the blood, and the blood capillaries carries them to the veins and all that, and several distributions, and removes them out from the body. So these are what we call blood vessels. Now, what are the functions of the capillaries? Number one, they permit the exchange of materials between the blood and the tissues. Between the blood and the tissues or cells. And number two is that they link the arteries and the veins. They serve as middlemen that link arteries, that link whatever the arteries is bringing to that of the vein. Okay? So that is that. The next thing to look at is blood flow. Blood flow through the vessels. Blood flow through the vessels. Now, there are several steps you need to understand on how blood flows around the body. Okay? If you could remember when we talked about double and single, open and closed circulatory system. We said in closed circulatory system, the blood flows within the cavity of what? The blood vessels and the heart. And that's why we call it circulatory system. It moves around the body. Now let's look at the stages involved. Now, one of the things is that what you need to know is that blood from the heart flows out through the arteries. Remember, we said that the arteries takes blood away from the heart. So the blood comes out of the heart through an artery, and the artery is actually the largest artery in the body, and that is the aorta, A-O-R-T-A, aorta. Now, the aorta serves as the artery that through which blood comes out. Blood comes out from the heart. Now, from the arteries, the blood enters into smaller networks of arteries, which are called the arterioles. Smaller network of arteries, which are called the arterioles. And from the arterioles, it enters into the capillaries. Okay? Now, from the capillaries, essential materials are exchanged by diffusion between the blood and the cells or the tissues. So essential materials are exchanged between the blood and the cells or tissues. Now, after that, blood from the tissues or from the capillaries then enter into smaller networks of veins, which are called the venules. And then from the venules, it enters into the veins. And from the veins, it then returns back to the heart through the largest vein, which is called the vena cava. And then the cycle continues again. That is how blood flows. That is how blood flows. So it comes out from the heart through the arteries. From the arteries, it enters into the arterioles, smaller networks of arteries. And from the arterioles to capillaries, from capillaries to venules, from venules to veins, from veins back to the heart, and continues like that. The cycle continues. So that is how blood flows through the vessels. Finally, for today, differences. Okay, not the final. Let's look at differences between arteries and then veins. Before we look at the final thing, differences between arteries and veins. Remember, I gave you several features of the structure of an artery and then also that of the vein. Now let's look at a few of them. Number one, the artery, they have thick muscular walls. I mentioned that. And then the vein, when you compare it with the vein has thin walls. Veins have thin walls. And then also number two is that the arteries, the walls are elastic. They are elastic due to the pressure of the blood that comes. So they are elastic, but in terms of the vein, they are not what? Elastic. And number three, in the arteries, the arteries actually carry blood away from the heart, while the veins carries blood into or to the heart. Another thing again you'll notice in the artery is that it has small lumen, small opening, small canal, okay, compared to that of the vein that has a large canal. And then also number 5 or so, we said that the artery, there is high blood pressure. The pressure of the blood is high, hence the elastic wall it has. But in the vein, the pressure is low, and so they don't need what? Any elastic what? Walls. So these are some of the differences between veins and then arteries, okay? Now finally, we have blood vessels that are located around the body, main blood vessels that are found in major organs of the body. But the blood vessel we're going to be looking at in this class is the blood vessels that are the arteries. That's just the arteries, not the vein, not the capillary. So we're looking at the artery. Now, the pulmonary artery supplies blood to the lungs. Pulmonary artery, while the pulmonary vein supplies blood, takes blood away from the lungs. We also have the hepatic artery. It supplies blood to the liver, which is an organ. Supplies blood to the liver, while the hepatic vein takes blood away from the liver. We have the renal artery, which supplies blood to the kidney, and then the renal vein takes away blood from the kidney. We have the mesenteric artery, which supplies blood to the stomach and also to the intestine, while we have the mesenteric vein. We also have the carotid artery, which supplies blood to the head. The artery that supplies blood to the head. We have the iliac artery, which supplies blood to the hind limbs. And then we have the gonadial artery, which supplies blood to the gonads. When we're talking about the gonads, we're talking about organs that help to produce gametes, organs that produces gametes. Like we have the testes, and then we have the ovaries, which is in both male and female. So the gonadial artery. And then the last one is the subclavian artery, which supplies blood to the 4 limbs. So these are the main blood vessels of the body. Now, before we go, I want us to look at some few past questions involving blood vessels. Let's look at a few questions involving blood vessels, very few, and then we call it a wrap-up. Now, look at this question, question 1. The reason why the flow of blood through the capillaries is very slow. The reason why the flow of blood through the capillaries is very slow is because the walls of the capillaries are very thin. B is to avoid high blood pressure. C is to ensure that the individual does not get dizzy. D is to allow adequate time for the exchange of materials. The correct answer is because the walls of the capillaries are very thin. Remember when we talked about that of the arteries, we said they are thick. And because they are thick, they have what? Because of the high blood pressure, they have thick walls. They have elastic walls. Their walls are thick and elastic so as to withstand the high pressure. But in terms of the veins, the walls are thin and they are non-elastic. The reason is that pressure is low. So compared to that of the capillaries, where the pressure, where the structure of the capillaries is, the walls are very, very thin, and it is non-elastic at all. So it means that the pressure will also be very what? Low. Very low. Very low. Next question, question 2. We have the blood circulatory system of vertebrates consists of what? Blood circulatory system of vertebrates consists of what? We have, remember I told you it's between the heart and the blood vessels when we talked about closed circulatory system, between the heart and the blood vessels. So let's see what it says. Is it from the heart to the aorta? Is it from the aorta to the arteries and veins? Wrong. Is it from the heart to the vena cava? No. Is it from the heart to the arteries and then capillaries and then veins? Correct. And is it from D, the heart to the aorta, capillaries and then veins? No. The aorta is not the only artery we have. Okay. So it is generally said it is from the heart to the arteries, and from the arteries to the veins, to the capillaries, and from the capillaries it returns back, enters the veins, and then from the veins it returns back to the heart, and then the cycle continues again. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using your Examguide app. The app scores and gives a detailed explanation of all the questions at the end of your practice test. You can also learn particular topics of interest with different modes like study mode, mock mode, and even practice mode. It also has other features that makes learning very fun. Now, it is a must for all serious students. Download from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels, hit the notification bell, and share the videos to your loved ones and friends that will benefit from it. Bye for now.